Hey all, this is Andy here from the Artist Grid. With COVID hitting, we have decided to focus on artists affected by this pandemic and to try to share some of their stories with you through our podcast, Tag Talks. COVID is going to do a lot of damage to our communities and our people we love and care about. Events that have been planned are being canceled, plans that have long been in place have been uprooted. We want to use this platform to invite people on to talk about how COVID has hit them, what they had planned, and what they are currently doing. With that being said, please enjoy this episode. Hey, so this is Andy from the Artist Grid. I'm here talking to Rama from Amarama Arts, and we were just sitting down and talking about COVID and life in COVID. Rama, if you want to introduce yourself and kind of talk a little bit about what you do and what all you are involved in.
Well, hello, art friends. My name is Amarama Vernaki. I'm a local artist here in the Rochester community, and I myself am a non-binary person. I incorporate that sometimes a lot in my artwork. I work with a lot of LGBTQI students in the area with art projects and more through needle felting. And I like to use it as an art form where people can relax, be creative, and just kind of as a nice way as that outlet to express themselves. And in regards to some projects I have going on lately, with the ways of trying to cope and what's going on, that's kind of what my angle is at these days. So, sorry, got kind of far out there. Nerves.
Oh, you'll just be yourself, It's always the most calming thing to hear, right?
It'll totally make all the anxiety go away. Totally.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful to be here. Thank you, Andy, for having me. And yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, Nick Novotny pointed me in your direction, and Nick Novotny is one of my oldest friends, and he's just a total mensch.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So you have a studio in Rochester, is that what I hear?
Yeah. Currently, I have a studio it's closed down at the moment per the governor's orders, which is a good thing for safety for all of us with COVID. But I do have a wonderful art studio newly opened and at the Castle community up on the second floor. And I'm really thankful to be there as a part of Threshold Arts in the Castle community. And the beauty is I just heard the other day that Threshold Arts is going to be resetting our studio setup to be for whenever we can get back in there. We just got the approval from that. So that was some really good, because when we're up there, we're there for about 3 to 6 month leases at a time, and you reapply. So I'm really thankful to their generosity for letting us have that reset, if you will, in that time period. But yeah, usually these days I'm found at the Castle, I should say rather in the past, that frame of mindset of where I am here now. These days, I'm thankfully here in the basement of my home with my amazing family. So I actually have to apologize in retrospect if there at any point there might be an occasional child or my Great Dane puppy coming by to be like, "Oh, look, mom's home." So I don't, it's I'm a creature of habit, and I like to be flexible. And so here I'm just making the best of my situation that I can. So really
absolutely.
thankful.
Have you found it difficult to be creative in all of this, all of COVID, all the shutting down, having your kids around while you normally don't?
Well, the beauty of that is I was a stay-at-home parent for the first 12 years, so I would always adjust my work schedule around whatever my kids' needs were and my family needs, which usually oftentimes resulted in me being a night owl with my work. I've tried work here and there in the day, but being flexible is always something that I think is really important. So in regards though with COVID, oh wow, yeah, I don't think anyone could have fully prepared for this. Regards to COVID, I think when it first came out and really hit home with the governor's order and everything being shut down, I had just kind of gone in this mode of, well, okay, let's reset and see what we can do at home. So I've been trying to do stuff at home, but it does get a little bit distracting at times. But I'm really thankful. I have a very supportive husband and partner, and my kids are just, they're really wonderful with everything. But I think last week was the hardest week I've had yet, where it was that grieving period, I guess, to fully put it, where I just was, it was blowback, like all three of the areas of my art business that whether it's teaching classes to students, I really miss a lot of my students that I work with, whether it's teaching art classes in the community and wonderful dear people I get to see regularly there, and being at art shows and art markets at different establishments locally that support local artists like myself. Just having that realization. And then also my job that I worked part-time, volunteered in part-time work there at Neon Green Art Studio in the Castle. Like just all of those 3 jobs that I had just overnight were gone. And I think it kind of, took about a week or 2 for it to hit me, but it was like, okay, last week so I just made sure I was just really kind and gentle with myself. And I would just try, usually my way of coping with things is to stay busy. But last week I just, was having one of those moments of, okay, this is my new normal. What can I do that's healthy to readjust? And then I took it simple. I picked up some crochet material that I had from my hand spun yarn. And I just took it simple. I went back to doing things that were just really self-soothing artistically. And that was a really nice eye-opener as far as saying, okay, I don't have to be busy all the time. In regards to my work. But that being said, when I first started this project, that's kind of what got me into thinking about the 60 Eyes and 60-Day Challenge, if you will. Originally it was, and the first 12 hours I had kickoff of that was I wanted local creatives, be it musicians, poets, fellow artists, dancers, or more, anyone who's been affected really negatively within the southeastern Minnesota region, of which I know there's lots of us, but this was a way of, I wanted to give out stories because there's all these musicians and whatnot where this is their sole means of income, or like myself, where we have 2 or 3 backup jobs. Well, those are all gone overnight. So I wanted a way to cope of like showcasing those artists, those creatives, those musicians. I wanted to showcase their story through their eyes. And I felt like it was the other portion of wanting to do that is because I wanted, for my own mental health, I really wanted to stay positive with that and uplifting for others as well as myself. I'm kind of one of those where if I keep my hands and my hands and heart busy, life's a little bit easier. So I was wanting to do that, and it was really an honor, and still is. I'm still been working on them. I haven't posted as much last week on them, but I will be doing that this week here. But what it is I wanted to showcase, okay, this is this person's story. I feel like eyes are kind of like the window of the heart and soul. And then that way and each eye on each person is so unique and beautiful. I wanted to really showcase that. So I've been showcasing their eye with the shout out to who the person is. And I wanted people to have direct links to their merchandise, their Venmo, their payments, their PayPal. Maybe their music is playing somewhere on Bandcamp or Spotify. I really wanted to amplify those places where people could still, okay, during this time period, we're all still using art to connect and technology. And I always remind my kids, hey, we're going to sit down and watch this show or listen to this music, but this is thanks to, what's a way we can pay it forward and still buy tickets virtually online. So this is kind of the way I wanted to showcase people with their eye, their story, try to help people a little bit now in the moment. And then I'm hoping that when I can get back to my art studio in the castle, that in my studio space, I'm going to be displaying all these 60 eyes for the public. And then I'm hoping to maybe get a grant or 2, but no matter what, I'd love to auction off the eyes. So whoever's eye is sold, 100% of those proceeds will go to that musician or that artist or that poet or whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's I wanted to do a little bit of a awareness, a little bit of self, art therapy, if you will, here and now for myself and others, and maybe inspiring people to do their own art. Or even if there's something new that they haven't tried in a while, just pick it up and give it a shot. And then, or maybe, or trying a new musical instrument or something by hiring online music lessons from a local musician maybe or something. So I just wanted to find a way to stay creative, keep continuing to support my fellow creatives in my community, and also maybe get a little bit of a kickback now by, encouraging people to buy their merch, gift cards, etc. and then, or Venmo tips or payments or something if they are doing a live show. And then I was hoping to later on maybe get them a little bit of money later on in August when. So I originally was planning August, but we'll wait and see how everything's going out, of course. But if there's anything I can do to just kind of help raise that awareness. So yeah, that was my long-winded Minnesota answer. So
I love that. No. I always think it's incredible to see people talk about the things they care about, and so I love that, and I think that's so meaningful. What you're doing, I really, really can't get over how amazing that is, and I love the 60 Eyes. I think that's brilliant. I love your model for this, and again, it's the stories that matter about people, and getting like a way to personalize them. I think that's like, for me, a big part of my life, and like why I wanted to do this, and so it's so refreshing to see that. That other people are finding that as important. I think it's interesting too. I was talking to someone else who was a painter, and they talked about how, during this whole process, they on one day they only had the energy to paint the canvas white, and that's all they did. And it was interesting. You talked about going back to crocheting and doing some, therapeutical, I guess things that are second nature to you, activities just to feel on top of like where you are. I thought that was interesting of just, you guys both did these kind of, very basic things of like, oh, I'm just going to retreat back here just to do something, put the pen to the pad metaphorically. I think that's brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that other people are, and like I said, I think especially with us creatives, we're a part of the population that has less advantages as far as mental health care and that kind of stuff. And I think like in regards to artwork, that's something that can really help a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a huge pro advocate of, as a person also unashamedly so with bipolar type 2. I'm a big advocate for medication therapy, mindfulness. But I tend to, when it comes to my art too, I tend to take the Stephen King approach as opposed to the George R. Martin approach, where I'll go. Hey, I love it. I love it when those both are great writers in their own way. But I appreciate the fact of if I'm not in the mood, I'm going to go try this for 10 minutes. Well, then even at the end of it, at least I've done something for 10 minutes. But 9 times out of 10, when I get in the middle of getting started for the day, working on some art that way, I always find, okay, now I'm starting to get back into it. And by the end of it, it does help feel a lot better for myself. But like I said, even if it's just like, nope, I'm still too tired. Hey, at least I've done that 10 minutes. That's huge,
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I think is like really important with art. I always remind a lot of my students in my classes, be kind to yourself when you're making something, because we are our own worst critics. And with practice, this is how you can get with visual artwork. But the more that a person does something, it might not be picture perfect for what they had in their mind's eye, but that's okay. I always remind also my students that I'm like, hey, when it comes to art, I've had a lot of failures in my lifetime, and they're like little pebbles, and I've had enough to make a road that I can walk on with it. And that road has led me to some really beautiful places, people, and experiences. So that's just as important in the artistic aspect. So it's one thing I really miss with all this is going to the live music shows, like Pieces, Cafe Steam, open mic night events, and more. I really miss, because there's something about live music that's just amazing. And I will say, getting to a whole new appreciation of technology with all this, it has been so cool to see people adapting and like trying a live stream with a concert for the evening, and we can pay them through tips through Venmo or check out their merch and stuff. But I really love that way of trying to find new ways to connect. And, reminding this isn't going to be like this forever. It will be a new normal, I'm sure, after all this, but how can we stay positive with this? And man, at the end of the day, artwork, and when I say art, I mean musically, everything, all those creative aspects. It's really cool to see how us creatives can all like pop through and shine and support each other. I think that's really important.
That's something else I've been reflecting on is, the different ways that creatives have moved here, because again, we all kind of have the same focus of like, oh, I need to do this for myself, and also I think this will bring healing to other people. It's kind of a mixed bag. But I think, seeing the different ways of like, I have friends that are reading movie strips, on YouTube or on Instagram, and it's like, a goofy, twerky thing that they're doing, and it's like, I never would have thought of that. Like, I love the ingenuity that we're seeing in that way.
Yeah. Oh, cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Thanks for, hey, you just inspired me to check that out too. That's awesome.
Yeah, I have
Nice.
a few friends that have done that, and it's been good for them. I also wanted to ask what different mediums you use for your artwork.
So I have, I kind of joke that I'm a Jill of all trades, but I'm the classic. So to go back a little bit, the reason for it, I swear there's a reason. I was the apprentice to my dad growing up, who he himself was an artist, and he was a sculptor and a potter. My dad had epilepsy, so everything was hand built, handmade. There was no electric kick. So he would have a kick wheel for doing his pottery, to give you an idea of how fast he'd have to get it if you ever tried pottery. So I was kind of like his apprentice. He was also the stay-at-home parent in a time period when that wasn't common. So I was there with my dad a lot, and I learned a lot of 3D hand-built techniques from my father. And then, so growing up in a household of artists, I had a sister who was a really good painter. So my domain was never fully sculpture. But so what I did is I went into stained glass mosaic in college and high school. And then I also ended up working with watercolors a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why I mentioned that is in college, I kind of filtered out a little bit. And I'd gotten a biology degree. I have an art minor also, but I'd gotten a biology degree because I was like, oh, I know what that is to grow up in a household without a paycheck. I don't want that insecurity for my kids. And then lo and behold, when I was finishing school, I was pregnant with my kids. I couldn't find a job, but then I went back to art. And that's how I got my art career off the ground. So I do have my kids and my wonderful husband and family to thank for that, because I don't think if I had had that access, it was like, oh, but I'm really thankful for that biology background, because the cool thing with it is it got me to going like, well, why does this work this way, or that kind of thing. And I think that helps a lot in the creative process to go as a lot of different viewpoints. And that's the thing I remind my kids a lot too during this time period. Like, it's like, okay, if you need a break from doing XYZ drawing, go read a book about this subject, or what's a new subject that you want to check out or something. So going back to that, since then, ever since I moved out under my dad's domain, because, he was a wonderful supportive artist, but that was always, his ego, his area.
Mm-hmm.
But in around 2009, I decided to get back into working with glass mosaic and sculptural cement viewpoints. So in 2009, I auditioned and was juried in for the Goose is Loose art contest. So I have that sculpture inside the Civic Theater. I jokingly call it pardon my language, my big ass glass goose. But I love it. That thing has over 40 pounds of hand cut glass that was shaped, and I used a resin as a clear grout. And then, so that was my first big public art piece where I finally felt accomplished as an artist. And I'm really thankful for that, the Goose is Loose project, because that really opened up the doorways for me to work more with glass. But then I had my children that were learning to crawl, so I couldn't use glass a lot because I was working out at home. So I put my glass mosaic stuff up for a while. And then I'd heard about spinning on my spinning wheel. A friend of mine had some sheep, and that's what got me into getting into being self-taught with spinning on a spinning wheel, but then also needle felting, because I had all the wool roving. Roving is when, so I'm proud to say I buy a lot of my wool locally from Happy Hobby Sheep, clean card, and I hand dye it all myself. So I'd heard about needle felting at the time, and this was before YouTube was really, God, I feel old saying that. This is before YouTube. Where you could say, oh my God, these days carburetors on, just check out YouTube, cool. But like, I had all this wool roving sitting around. I'm like, what am I going to do with all this? Well, Etsy at the time had just started to get really big. So I bought on Etsy one of these felting needles. And it's a type of needle that, I don't know if you can see that, but it's the type of needle that's slotted at the top. So when you poke in and out of the wool, it causes heat and friction and makes the wool more dense, so you can shape the wool. Similar to if you've ever shrunk a wool sweater in the wash.
Mm-hmm.
It's really big and then it gets really little. And that's because of the heat and friction and the hot agitation and movement from the water. So in this case, I am wool sculpting or step. So here's a custom order for a client that I made of her little, she wanted a tree diorama. So it's all wool.
That's amazing.
To like shape it, show them like a little owl and stuff. And I love it as an art form because, and sometimes if you get tired and want wintertime, you can take off the foliage. But I love it as an art form because you're only as limited as the imagination. You can make it as realistic. Here's an eye by Brenna of It's Whimsical Life. She's an artist that I featured recently. Sorry if I, I don't know if you can see that.
That's amazing.
But I love it as an art form because you can get as realistic or as fun and whimsical as that tree. And I like that because I never get bored with it. So when I started all this, I was self-taught. But over the years, whether it's 3D pet portraiture, custom orders of you name it, I could pretty much make it. I like custom orders because I see it as a form of challenge. And then I still always set an hour or two a day for my own art needs of whatever it is that I'd like to make. But I loved it as an art form because it's varied 2-dimensionally, 3-dimensionally, and it's just something I don't really ever get tired with. I do, in 2017, I think it was, I did the Arts for Trails sculptures, and then I also had a big shiny shoe sculpture that I made for Art on the Ave that got accepted that year too for a temporary green space. So I still occasionally do large cement glass mosaic sculptures now that my kids are older. But at the end of the day, fiber art, this is just really my main number one love because I can do a lot of 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional stuff. And then also spinning it on my spinning wheel is just really meditative and relaxing. Fun fact, I don't know how to knit. I'm horrible. They are art forms I greatly admire, but I've taken classes, I'm lost cause. But it's an honor to be a part of another fellow artist's artwork process is kind of how I see it. So that's kind of why these days I do a lot of needle felting. I'll do also what's called wool painting, like with the eyes, for example. I also like to do that as a waveform because traditionally fiber arts have been seen traditionally in society as a feminine thing, and therefore it's not taken as seriously, unfortunately, by a lot of people, which is far from the fact. And I think this is like, it's a great way, needle felting is a great way to show, look, your materials don't matter. It's the intent you have behind what you're making.
Yeah.
And I think that the cool thing with fiber art that I found, one of my 2016 grants that I'd gotten involved, one of my children, she's okay with me sharing this, I've asked her, but she's on the autism spectrum. And one day she was touching a piece. So for example, with the eyes, I've actually done that too. All of my stuff was touchable too. It's very touch friendly. It's not damage it. But she was touching a piece one day. She's like, Mom, I can feel the colors. And that's what got me to thinking, oh, how would you describe famous artworks to someone who's blind or visually impaired or sensory seeking? Because on this piece that my daughter was touching, there was brown llama, yellow Tulsa silk, and blue Icelandic sheep wool. And I made recreations of famous artworks like the Van Gogh bust that I have on my art page on Facebook, that kind of stuff. Those are, each color is a corresponding matching fiber. So if you're blind or sensory seeking, you can feel where those colors change.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately why the past 5 years have really loved working in fiber arts, because it's something that I can make more accessible to a population and people who might not experience art the same way we do. At the same time, it's also empathetic for those of us who are sighted to be able to see and understand, or see, quotations, an understanding of how other people might experience the world through touch.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I guess my long-winded, so I have a little bit of things here and there, but these days I pretty much call myself a fiber artist. Yeah.
That's like one of the coolest things I've ever heard, actually, making that more accessible and making that, reimagining how we see things and how we experience things. I think that's so cool.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, that's absolutely wonderful. I wanted to ask, too, you have websites, I take it. You have places where people can find your art, say they wanted to purchase your art, things like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sure. If people want to, so these days, I do have a professional website that's amaramaart.com. It's through Wix. So if you look that up on Google, it'll pop up. But these days, most accessible space is Instagram and Amarama Art, all one word. There's a beautiful brown eye with rainbow hues around it. And then on Facebook, it's Amarama Art there, and there's a variety of needle felted. The background page of that one, I have a bust of Van Gogh that I made based off of his last painting for half of that art exhibit from 2016, actually. So if people if they're interested in something, just shoot me a message. I have a variety of pricings for different size stuff. So if they want like a custom order of their pet portraiture or something, or just anything in mind, I'm always happy to, anything I can do to help make a creative person's dream come true. It's an honor. So yeah.
That's
I
so
know
cool.
I did, but I really love doing it because it's like, yay! So.
It's really inspiring for me, being someone who just met you, who to see how big your heart is and how much you care about people. I think that's very apparent, and I think that's very touching to see and refreshing to see right now.
That's very kind of you. You're going to make my head float up right away.
We're glad you caught this episode of Tag Talks. Check the links in the description below to find further content and discover the artist's work for yourself. You can find more episodes of Tag Talks on Spotify or explore what else we do at www.theartistgrid.com and connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at The Artist Grid.